Good afternoon, viewers. Uh, you are viewing us from Fine TV Gambia. We are here to discuss very important discussion which will be centered around the present status quo of the Gambia at 58 years of independence. This is a topic that we're discussing, especially at a time whereby we are searching the right way to follow to meet our needs and aspirations as Gambians. So today I have here political science students from the University of the Gambia who will help us to interrogate certain issues as regards our present status quo concerning our social, political, economic, and educational aspects of life as Gambians. And we will try also to interrogate where do we find ourselves as Gambians today after 58 years of independence. We fought for independence, putting into considerations what we want to achieve at the end of the day. After 58 years, we want to locate our positions as far as meeting our aims and aspirations as Gambians are concerned. So I am Breso, a history major at the University of the Gambia School of Education. I have here three individuals from the School of Arts and Sciences, all of them majoring in political science. I think they are one of the best people to be here with us to interrogate the topic that we are trying to look at. So I will allow them to individually introduce themselves for the viewers to know who they are. So I will start with this gentleman. John, can you tell us who you are?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Bire, for having us. My name is John Jaliba Mbake, a student of political science and a third-year political science student. I am glad to be here to discuss this topic, which is very important and also very key to discuss at a period like this, especially when we are looking forward to celebrating 58 years of independence. I look forward to an interesting conversation. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. You can tell us who you are.
Good afternoon, viewers. My name is Lamin Damba. I'm a fourth-year political science major at the University of the Gambia from the School of Arts and Sciences. Thank you, Fine TV, for having us here, and we look forward for a very interesting session ahead.
Good evening, viewers. I am Nicola A. Mendy, a third-year political science student major and a French minor. Yes, I'm here to discuss on the very important topic that is in regards to the 58 years after the Gambia had regained her independence from colonial rule.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for having introduced yourself and also for telling us your area of specialization at the University of the Gambia. As I have said earlier, I believe you are one of the best people to help us interrogate certain issues as regards the topic that we are trying to look at. That is the present status quo of the Gambia at 58 years of independence. A great philosopher, Socrates, once says, a life which is not examined is not worth living, which means we have to examine our life. Anything that we do or anything that we have been doing, time to time we have been examining. It's very important to examine our activities and also our life. This will help us to know the gaps which needs to be filled and we close the gaps. So after 58 years of independence, I think it is very important we examine ourselves as Gambians so as to know the gaps that need to be filled as far as meeting our aims and aspirations as Gambians are concerned. So as far as this topic is concerned, looking at the present status quo of the Gambia at 58 years of independence, here we will try to interrogate the social aspect, the economic aspect, the political aspect, as well as the educational aspects. But I would just like us to have a chronology of the history, and as that being the case, we will at least go further or behind before independence. And we will try to look at what led to independence. There were events that led to independence, which was nationalist movement. In fact, before nationalist movements, there was also an event that gave rise to the agitation for independence, which was colonialism. Because if we were not colonized, our nationalist leaders would not have woken up and fought for independence. So they woke up to fight for independence, rather, because of colonization. So I want us to look at first we look at colonization and what were actually the circumstances surrounding colonization. So I want you to help us understand colonization. From there, we look at what were the circumstances surrounding colonization and where do we find ourselves when we were in the colonial period. So I will start with John. John, help us to understand what colonization is all about.
Thank you very much, my brother Bire. With regards to colonization was a period, or it can be seen generally as a moment whereby a country is being controlled politically, socially, and economically by a force that is more powerful than that particular country. And that was exactly what we face as a country and also as a continent. Before independence, as you rightly mentioned, that this country was colonized by England. And when England colonized us, they colonized us for a period of over 100 years. We were under the Great Britain. And during this period, we were not having our self-control or even having people that are from our soil or even Gambians trying to administer or even lead their fellow Gambians. We were being controlled by people outside this country. And this system through which we were being controlled is what is popularly referred to as the indirect rule system. It was the system that England used to be able to colonize us as a country and some of our colonies in Africa. So basically, this is what we refer to as colonization, a period in which countries are being controlled politically, economically, and socially by a powerful force that is external to its own country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, for telling us what colonization is all about. So if you understand it very well, colonization is all about imposing a foreign rule on people, and this imposition of foreign rules on people is normally done by a more powerful state. And you have clearly stated it. The British used the policies of direct rules in the protectorate of their colonies, indirect rule rather, in the protectorate of their colonies and direct rules in the crown colony. That was well understood. Mr. Lawin, I just want you to tell us just what were the reasons that forced the colonial masters to come in Africa and colonize us, especially the Gambia. What forced the British to colonize us?
Thank you. There are factors that push the British to colonize Africa and especially the Gambia. If you look at the evolution of world, how powers were shared in the world, then it was more of a realist perspective in the world that nation want to show dominance. If you control other nation, you are seen as a great nation, powerful, and you get momentum in the world. So this was the fight that led the British going out to scramble for lands in Africa. Gambia, why Gambia special? Looking at the map of the Gambia, it's just like a point back in the stomach of Senegal. So you find that it was more for them about the resource that they can tap from this country, and then the mode of transportation from one continent to the other was via river and waters. So it was important for them to occupy a nation like the Gambia because it will give them it was a very strategic location for them to access things and easily move them towards the coast and move shipping them back to their country. And we always debate in the Gambia that there are no resources. But still, what led to the British colonizing the Gambia? What was that special? We studied about the Anglo-French trade rivalry. That was the push and pull between the British and Senegal to occupy places like James Island, to occupy places like Joffre. And why? Because it was very strategic. It was very strategic because then transportation was water. When they needed resources from Africa. But they cannot transport these resources from Africa to their own continent without using water bodies. This was the mode of transportation. There was no aeroplanes then. There was no huge that this new type of lorry or trucks that are available. It was trains then. And if trains move, take stuff from the interior part of the country towards the coast, you need to transport these things. But Gambia was so strategic because our river is navigable. You understand? So it was very crucial for them to access they can even go to the interland without using the land, which was very, very dangerous. We talk about the harsh people who were not friendly. You talk about the wars that were happening within the people of Africa. So one, it was a very strategic location for the British, for them to be able to access the hinterland, and that led to colonialism. In fact, if you read more about colonialism, you know that at some point they realized that that what led to the coming of indirect. They don't want to spend; they want to take. Right.
Okay.
So that was the whole idea of occupying the Gambia.
Thank you, Lawin. We will come back to you. Thank you for that explanation of what uh, uh, compelled the British to colonize the Gambia. Yeah, not only in the Gambia, but I would agree with you that all across Africa, the main reason for colonization was for economic gains. And this has been attested to by various historians. J.A. Hodgson, in his book Imperialism, published in 1902, explained that the main reason for imperial expansion was economic objective. This was why, after the abolition of the slave trade, legitimate trade was introduced. To make legitimate trade very effective, political control has to be instituted in Africa. So all you have said is right, that the main reason the British acquired the Gambia was for her own economic interests. Then I will move to Mr. Nicholas. Nicholas, can you tell us some of the things that characterize colonization? Like when the Gambia was colonized, where did we find ourselves when we were colonized, during colonization? How would you describe the condition of the Gambia and the Gambians during colonization?
Well, to start with the conditions of the Gambia during colonization, one has to go back up to the period before colonization, when we're talking about the pre-colonial era. In pre-colonial era, Gambia used to have its own the rule, its own system of government using chiefs and using kings and the like. So they have set up a particular system of governing that which suit the people of the Gambia. And not only Gambia, but Africa in general. They had their own system of government. And that is why, if I'm to discuss about independent, I would say regain in a sense that we were at first independent and then used to have our own system of administration, our own system of government, which we were okay with. But until the Europeans started to come to Africa, and when they came to Africa, at first it was to exploit Africa. When they explored Africa, they realized that there is something in Africa. They came to trade with African people, but that was not enough for them to get the sources, the resources that Africa had at that moment. And Gambia will not be an exception to it, of course. Gambia do have resources. And what happened is, when they realized that these people had some resources that we could use, it has also considered with the time of industrialization in Europe. And looking at it back in America, there could be plantations that were doing, and then they took some slaves to work in those plantations. But in Europe, the soil in Europe was not that good in agricultural purposes. So one could trace back the origin of colonization at the period of the abolition of the slave trade. So this what led to colonization in the Gambia here. So what happened was that at this moment they realized that there are some resources that we can tap. They want to abolish the slave trade and introduce what we call legitimate trade to get the resources that the Gambia had, but at a cheaper exchange. When they realized that this will not be okay for them, they wanted to extend their influence and then gain control of everything, where they will dictate the happenings that will occur in the Gambia economy. So by that reason, they see it a necessity to extend their influence, because remember, they used to have a sated man that they bought from the king of Nyomi at that time, from the 18th and the 19th, 1816th rather, when Captain Alexander came. That is what can say that, that is where they started extending their influence. And later they feel like the sated mind was very small for them. They have to extend. That is how they were expanding. But their reason was to go to an extent whereby they will control the entire Gambia and then dictate what will happen, both socially, economically, and politically in the Gambia as a country, and which they were able to succeed in doing so. And when they did that, actually the system of government of the Gambia had to change from what used to be there during colonialism, before colonialism, and then they introduced their own system of government that suits what they were able to do. And they had to divide the Gambia into two. If not only the Gambia, but all the British colonies had to divide it into two areas. You have what you call the Crown Colony, that is the area that they acquired before the partitioning and the scramble and partition of Africa. And they had the Protectorate, that is around the hinterland of the area. So they set up a direct rule in the Crown Colony to control the people that are there. And they realized that the climate was not favorable, and the transportation was difficult. The disease, health-wise, is not, comfortable with them at the Protectorate. So they have to send representatives at the Protectorate, and they use indirect rule to get control of the Protectorate. So this is how they were able to control the entire Gambia and dictate on what will happen in the economic situation of the Gambia, dictate what will happen socially, dictate what will happen politically. So there, by and large, the Gambia now left with nothing but to dance to their tune until people rise and see to it that this was very evil to their side. They had to establish, there is a certain movement that will agitate and they fight for independence. Of course, they started by trade unions, the first led by Edward Francis Small, and etc. Yeah, so just the case of time, we just can.
Thank you. I think you have answered the question that we have found ourselves in a state of dismay during colonization, as you have said it, as a result of the acquisition of territories by the British, started from 1816 when Batos was acquired. 1826, the Cedar Mine was acquired. Yes, we have found ourselves in a situation which was different from the one which we were before, both politically, economically, and socially. You have said it. The traditional political system was dismantled, and a foreign one was instituted. In fact, we were ruled by a remote controller. Yeah, that was very right. So colonialism was all characterized by exploitation, as you have said. So now we have seen that colonialism was instituted. John, was colonialism good for the Gambians or Africans in general?
Thank you very much, Bire. With regards to whether colonialism was a good practice towards Gambians or even Africa at large, I will say colonialism was completely not in any way good towards our development, socially, economically, politically, as a country. Because as I rightly mentioned, colonialism can only take place when a powerful force or a powerful country dominates a country which is not powerful. Example, in the case of the Gambia and England. England was more powerful than the Gambia. That is why we were colonized. They were able. So this is why, in my own understanding and in my own belief, I think colonialism was completely no way advantageous or relevant towards the development of the Gambia. And that is why till today, we are still in this situation that we find ourselves, that we are still not developed as a country after 58 years of independence.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, you have submitted that colonialism was, of course, not a good practice as far as Gambians we are concerned. Thank you for that. I mean, we have seen in the after the Second World War, after 1945, in fact, far before that, there was a week in Africa which was characterized by fighting for independence. In fact, by 1917, the National Congress of British West Africa was established in Ghana by Joseph Keasley Hayford. So I want you to tell us, in the Gambia specifically, what were the reasons behind the Gambian nationalists to ask for self-rule, to ask for independence? What were the reasons behind their move?
I will take it in two folds. What agitated, what awakens Gambian intellectuals to agitate for independence. One was, like you mentioned, the National Congress of British West Africa, when Edward Francis Small attended their congress. He was triggered by what other Pan Africans were doing and what other nationalists were doing in their nation. So when he came back immediately, he started pushing forward to make sure that the Gambia also gained independence. And learning from those people, directly he didn't form a political party, neither did he tell the British, give us our independence. But what he did was to try to form union party, trade unions. When he started forming those trade unions, because if you don't have a united voice, you cannot fight. He called those trade unions to make sure that intellectual, educated people, Gambians are together for them to be able to have one voice and to fight against colonial rule. The second part that they took was, the second part that led to this agitation was, we look at indirect rule as a system. You are taking the chiefs and also the crown colony, which is the British and the chiefs ruling. The educated elites feel like they are sidelined, and that also led to the agitation of independence. They feel like, how can we be educated and we understand governance, we understand how things should go, but we are not in the system. This was the second thing also that led to independence. So basically, these were main things, and you can see Edward Francis Small on both aspects, right? From those forming trade union, forming political parties, and this led to the development of having high representation, the coming of no taxation without proper representation. They try to use the House of Representation to fight, to send their voices. They use the masses to fight to make sure that they gain this. But two aspects were mainly, that is what they learn from other Pan-Africans in Africa, and also them being sidelined. They feel like they should be part of the Keiko. Those were the two aspects that led to them being agitated for.
Okay. Thank you very much. If I may understand it very well, there were both external factors and internal factors. And the external factors have to do with influence outside the Gambia and outside Africa in general. And the internal factors were the exploitations and the exclusion of the educated lives from the colonial administration that gave rise to the agitation for independence. Okay. We have seen, because of that agitations, independence was granted in 1965. Nicholas, I want you to tell us what specifically, what were the needs or the aspiration, or what specifically the Gambian needs at that time, what specifically did they need at that time that forced them to ask for independence? What did they need at that time?
Well, to discuss about the needs of Gambians at that time, especially the educated elites who were very marginalized in terms of government, look at it, they had to establish a system of government, as I said. During the Crown Colony, they had a particular pattern that they followed. It was organized that in direct rule, you have the monarch. From the monarch, you have the SOS, that is the secretary of the state for the colonies. And then you have the governor, coming down to the legislative council and then the executive council, and then to the chief. But you will see today that the monarch that is out of it, that is the queen that was taken in charge. The executive, that is the secretary for state of general, they were out of it. But coming to the governor, they were also out of it. Now coming to the forum, that is the legislative council and then the executive council, they did not have proper representative. Imagine being in your country, a government is set up there, and you are not represented. That's what motivated Edward Francis Small to say, no taxation without any proper representation, because they were paying tax to the British government, but they were not represented. And if you are not represented, your voice will never be heard. Your needs will never be solved. So Gambians feel like we need something more. We need to be there in order to fight for what we want. And that is why they have, he was very motivated when he attended the conference of the British West Africa in Ghana. He came back and he established a chapter. He had to bring the people together also trying to let them see the evil in colonialism so that they can join hands with him. He has seen it, but he wants others also to see from the same perspective so that they can join hands with him and fight for for independence, for the independence. So that is why when he came, he established a trade union. Other people also like JC Faye were also motivated to establish a Gambia Teachers Union. Momodu Ijalo also was motivated and established the Gambia Workers Union. So from this union in the 1920s, going to the 1950s, after 30 years, they were able to come up with political parties, some of them. And together they were able to educate. Each and every one of them use what you have in your position to educate other people and inform them about the evil of colonialism and how Gambia was what exploited. And then together they will see a reasons of joining hands together, be united, and fight for independence. Eventually, they came to fight for independence and went to a moment whereby they had to come together. Trade union advocate, the Mamadou E come with the workers trade union, how to call it, JCFI, John Qualify came with the Gambia Teachers Union, and then they fight so that more teachers can be trained in, that is what JCFI did, more teachers can be trained in order for them to educate other people so that they can have the masses that are educated, and then together, of course, the Edward Francis Small used his own law firm and also his newspaper to educate those that are educated, to inform them about the evil of colonialism. So this is how they were able to fight and then come to have what independence, with political parties joining them at the latter part, around the 1950s, having the first political party, JCFI, established on party, SNI come with a political party. And then they all together mobilized. By 1960s, going to 61, they had to request for internal self-independence, self-government, which they attained in 1963, of course. And then later, they had to request for fully independent. That is how they move. But that was when they were given and then follow the pattern of the British administration by having still the Queen as the monarch and then Dawda serving as the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. I think the question was well buttressed on the needs for independence was proposed, like you said, to have proper representation. It was only if we had proper representation that exploitation can be fought. That was why individuals like Edward Francis Small, who is historically considered as the father of modern Gambian politics, stood up and decided to fight colonialism at all costs. You have talked about the mechanisms he used, the means he used, establishing trade unions, associations, and the likes, which were a training ground for the later upcoming Gambian politicians like J.C. Faye, Salawat Jawaras, and the like. They were all, trained in those trade unions. Yeah, the need for independence was to have proper representation, because it was only through proper representation that exploitation can be fought. John, that proper representation, by 1947, the elective principles was introduced in the Gambia, and only one seat was given to the Gambians, and that seat was meant to replace, to represent Batos and Komosien, which means till now the protectorate were excluded. How will you see that as a proper representation?
Yeah, I think that is basically, it has no difference with regards to what they were even agitating for. They are agitating for proper representation, but what was given to them was not even proper representation. We have to understand as a country that this country is beyond Brikama. Several times people think that the Gambia only stops at Brikama, going towards the areas that you mentioned, Combo St. Mary and Banjul. But proper representation has to do with people who are in Badibu, people who are in Jara, people who are in Kiang, people who are in CRR, and even people who are in Basse, having people to serve as their representatives in these legislative houses. Because it is only when you have people representing you in these houses, that is the time that your needs and your aspirations can be met. But you cannot have someone who is serving as a representative for Combo St. Mary, and also you think that person will be able to understand what the people in CRR are facing or what the people in Basse are facing. The person cannot understand it, in as much as it is in the same country, but we also have to understand that the context is different. What is needed in Combo St. Mary may necessarily not be the same thing that is needed in CRR at that particular time. So the proper representation that people were agitating for was not met at all, because what happened, they only extended it to only one area. That is the Combo St. Mary, and ignoring the protectorate places like Badibu that I mentioned and Kiang. So these people who are not represented will not also be able to meet their changing demands that they are yearning for, because they do not have people that are going to serve as their representatives in this House of Representation.
Okay, thank you. Well, understood. Okay, Lamin, we have seen up till 1964, the British were not willing to grant Gambia independence. And the justification they give was that the Gambia was categorized under what they call smaller state. And in that, the condition was until an association or a relationship with Senegal is established, the Gambia will not be given independence. Based on just that justification. And what we are seeing today, as regard our economic constraint, our security constraint, our so many constraints, do you agree that the British were right in their justification?
It's a debate actually. I will not speak here from based on. I will try to relate it to other developed countries who are smaller than the Gambia. When you go to the Caribbean, you find, example, Montserrat is smaller than the Gambia, and you have more than 50% employment in the country. So whether what Becky Rice was saying, the birth of an improbable nation was right or not, I think if he was to be asked that question today, he will say he was wrong. But the constraint that the Gambia is having 58 years after independence, and what was seen that the Gambia was too small and it have to be merged to Senegal for it to be a country, considering the size, was not actually, to me, a justification, because history have proven that it's wrong already. But coming to the Gambia, why are we here? Why are we still scrolling after 58 years of independence? And what can be done about that is also another point to be discussed.
Okay, we'll come to that. Okay.
But whether or not it's right, whether or not that statement was right, to me it wasn't right actually, because Gambia have moved on as a country, and 58 years as a country, we are still striving though. But the actual reality is, it is not the fault of the size of the country.
Okay, we'll come to that.
We'll
come to that.
Yeah, so exactly. So to answer that question short, that the Gambia, the actual papers that were written about the Gambia then, and it cannot stand, and what even led to the delay of independence was wrong.
Yeah, okay, we'll come to that. I will. That's your position, that the British justification cannot stand the test of time. Looking into consideration what the Gambia has produced since 1965. I will come to Nicholas. Still now the same question. Up till 1964, the British were not willing to grant Gambia independence. That was why in 1962, Duncan Stanley, the Secretary of State for Colonies in the British Parliament, said that until a association or relationship with Senegal is met, the Gambia will not be granted independence, because they believe the Gambia couldn't stand on its own. So, putting into consideration what we are facing today as a nation, economically, socially, politically, so how will you see that justification?
Well, that justification at that time, to me, my position will be that it was not a meaningful stand by Bekon, that the Gambia was too small to be granted independence at that moment. They were trying to use that as an excuse in order to still try to control the Gambia. knowing fully well that Gambia, in fact, the river itself was a strategical location. And in as much as they were using the Gambia for most of their activities, they never wanted to give Gambia independence. But of course, if people are requesting for independence and you don't want to give them, you must look for an excuse that you will give as your stand why you don't want to give them. But you cannot just tell them plainly that I'm not going to give you your independence and you stop there, because they will further request for reasons. So the reasons, please look around and say, okay, why not I tell them that the Gambia is too small to be granted independent? And when they asked them, that was the reason why we were trying to colonize, to join you together with Sierra Leone. But because of distance, it was not able to. But if it was not that, the Gambia and Sierra Leone will have been joined together in the British administration. And that is why you will see when they were abolishing slaves, when Sierra Leone Freetown was congested, they had to send some of them to the Gambia here after Alexander Grant had acquired Batos.
Okay, thank you very much. You are in the same position with Lamin. That is, the justification was baseless. John, we have acquired independence in 1965, 18th of April. Sorry, February rather. But looking into, putting into consideration the independence constitutions, which still allowed the positions of the governor to remain. And still the governor reserving certain constitutional powers. Most especially, he was given the power to appoint the prime minister and also other cabinet members. Looking into consideration that powers that the governor still retain, there are many arguments that the Gambia did not regain independence, or the Gambia was independent in that 1955. How will you explain that to us?
A very interesting question. I know as we look forward to celebrating independence tomorrow, there are also a group of people that are not even thinking about celebrating independence tomorrow. They are waiting until April 24th to celebrate their own independence, because that was the year that Gambia was seen as a sovereign state. That is April 24th in 1970. So with regards to this question that you ask, what is my position on this? I will say tomorrow what we are celebrating is what I will call flag independence. That is what I will call flag independence. But why do I call it flag independence? And why is it that I do not call it political independence? Because after 1965, we had people like Safari Mansingate as governors. And Safari Mansingate as governor, and then Sir Dawda Kairaba Jawara as prime minister, has no difference with what is happening in the United Kingdom. You understand that in the United Kingdom, you have a prime minister, and yet still you have a king or queen who serve as the monarch and who serve as the leader of the nation. And that was the same thing also that was happening in this country. And a country that is operating in such a manner cannot be seen as a sovereign country. And a country that is not sovereign does not gain her independence. And that is why I will also join those that hold the view that this country did not gain independence until 1970, the time that we were seen as a republic, the time that we were seen as a sovereign state. That was the time that we gained our independence. Because throughout, we had people like Sir John Paul as governors. We had people like Sir Fariman Singate as governors. We had Sir Dawda as prime minister, not as president. That was a period that we did not have the president, self-government, legislature, and even the judiciary. So for me also, in my own perspective, I'm not going to see it as independence or political independence by that time, but I'll see it as flag independence in 1965.
John, I have a follow-up question.
All right.
Don't you think that your position is baseless? Putting into consideration that in 1965, after we have regained what history calls our independence, we were able to join the international organization like other independent states. Don't you think that brought us apart with other independent countries?
Thank you very much for that question. What we need to ask ourselves, now that we have joined this international organization, what is our position in this international organization? Do we have a say compared to other countries that regain independence, not only flag independence, but political independence, that are even organizing periodic election with even term limits, or even not term limits, but a country that regain political independence, and also they have a government, a judiciary, a legislative body. Can we compare ourselves with those type of countries? So what we should look at is Britain are the ones who who gave us our independence in 1965, what I call the flag independence. They will also allow us to take part in these international organizations. Because when you look at this international organization, even from the word international, it tells you that it is not common, it is foreign, it is not African. And who are the people who are controlling this international organization? There are people who are in Europe and America, and England is in Europe. So that is why they will grant us the privilege and the latitude to be able to take part in these international conferences that are as a member of the international organization. But we are not as seen as a country that have full say compared to other countries that gain their political independence. Because by that time, we were still under the influence and leadership of the British monarch.
You call it a flag independence.
Yes.
We do not have full say. Do we have full say now?
You're asking if you have full say now?
Yes, now.
That is why I'm saying, when I say it is flag independence, and 1970 I said we gain now what I call independence, is because that was the time that we were seen as a sovereign state. That was the time that we were seen as a republic. That was the time that everybody can say the Republic of the Gambia. But before 1970, nobody can just stand and say the Gambia is a republic, because we were not a republic. We were still having prime ministers who are representing the Queen in England. But now, from 1970 coming upwards, then we started gaining political independence. But we also suffered when we gained political independence. Until today, we continue to suffer.
Okay. So your position is that in 1955,
yes,
what we had was
flag independence.
Yes, as you call it.
Yes.
Okay. I will still differ. Put it into consideration that from 1965, Gambians did not elect the head of the state, but the head of the government was indirectly elected by the Gambian, who was the prime minister. Putting that into consideration, the prime minister, Sadao Rekirewa Jawara, was in full control of the government. And the monarch, who was the queen, represented by the governor, was just a ceremonial head of state. And to corroborate my argument, the same thing was in the case of Ghana. Ghana became independent in 1957, and from 57 to 60, Ghana was in that parliamentary monarch, parliamentary democracy, like in the Gambia. Meaning they got their republican status in 1960. The same thing with Nigeria. Independence 1960, republican status 1963. The same thing with Sierra Leone. Independence 1961, republican status in 1971. In fact, Sierra Leone's period of parliamentary democracy was longer than that of the Gambia. So will you tell me here that if Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, we are not also independent the very day they were granted independence?
Yes, these countries that you mentioned, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, among others, and even the Gambia, I'll once again say all these countries gain what I call flag independence. Because if they do not gain flag independence, why is it that they were not also granted the opportunity and also the privilege, the right also to be a republic by the same year that they gain independence? Like you mentioned, Ghana gaining flag independence in 1957, but they were not seen as a republic until 1960. These governors that you are mentioning, these prime ministers that you are mentioning, you are saying they are serving as the leaders in the country. They were not even different with the indirect rule system, in my own point of view, because these are people who are seen as people who are sent. Let's say you are sent for a survey in a particular village, and now you have to come back, or there is a particular period that you have to give back a report to those that send you as to the progress that were made and also the challenges that you were facing in that particular village that you went to. That is how these governors were in these countries that gained their flag independence, like Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, and even the Gambia. And until when they were seen as a republic and they were seen as a sovereign state, that is when they become a state or a country that people can even say, yes, these people have gained their independence. Whether it is going to be a weak one, you can argue about it, but it was not independence until you are a sovereign state, until you are a republic. That is my own perspective.
Okay, how will you explain sovereignty to us?
How will I explain sovereignty to us? Sovereignty, in my own understanding, is being free from external forces. What do I mean when I say being free from external forces? That you do not have a leader that has to be reporting to the West every now and then. Like then when we had a prime minister, what the Queen wanted him to do, that were the same things that he's supposed to do in this country. And likewise also the governor. So this is basically what sovereignty means.
Thank you. I can see you are very strong in your position. Anyway, Lavin, you had the argument with John. What is your position in this?
This is a bit of more than a century of, or let me say more decades of debates on this area. But independence and in fact sovereignty, the most important part of it is recognition, whether other states accept that you are really independent or you are even a sovereign state. We see so other states that are even not controlled by any other state. They are there, they have in their government there, but they are not recognized as a sovereign state. So what is more important to me is the recognition that you have and people accepting that this country is a state. Because if you want to use that as a point of bargain, you will argue that Senegal is not independent. Would you? Because we see the system in Senegal. The budget of the country will not be approved without funds. So if we are to argue that yes, Gambia was independent in 1965, then we might well argue that Senegal is not up to date, is not independent. But we have to understand also the fact that we are in a globalized world. This connection cannot be breaking. At some point, whether it's being exploitative or not, now the ball is in our court as country.
Okay, Lamin, which means you differ a bit with John.
Exactly.
Which means you are in a different argument with John. Meaning you agree that you are with the argument that the Gambia was fully independent in 1965, and the premise of your argument is the recognition. And recognition is one of the features of sovereignty of a sovereign state, which means by 1965 we are sovereign if we should be on the recognition, because by the recognition that's why we were able to join the international organization. Okay, but John still, I know he's very still strong in his position.
Very.
Okay, I know. Political scientists are like that. Okay, but anyway, he has an argument. Okay, Nicholas, we became republic in 1970, 24th of April. But there were events that preceded it. After independence, a year after independence, Sadauda wanted a Republican status, and a referendum was conducted. And unfortunately for him, things did not go as he wanted it. The majority of the Gambians voted against the Republican bill. And in fact, some of the opposition leaders like P.S. Njai, they were against the opposition, the Republican bill. They were campaigning alongside Salaro Jawara to go against the Republican status. And majority of Gambians voted against the Republican status. Now, why do you think Gambians voted against republicanism in 1966? Why do you think? Was it that they were still comfortable being on that system, that parliamentary democratic system, still retaining the governor, the England still haven't say about our affairs? Was it about that, or what was the issue?
To answer to that question, I believe I must drag you back to the time of the formation of political parties in the Gambia. If you come to realize it, if you come to look at it at that moment, you will see to it that among the reasons why Gambians we are struggling for over 45 years before they could attain this the independence that we are talking about today, which we are to celebrate tomorrow, you will see that there was this lack of unity among Gambian elites and some of these political party, the leaders. So when they acquired independence in 1965, obviously it was a gradual process. If you remember the Gambia, first of all, attained what we call self-government in 1963. So gradually to independent in 1965. A year later, as you mentioned, Sadauda Kairaba Jawara proposed for a Republican, it is sort of the Gambia can be a sovereign state based on what sovereignty was defined, but not up to the modern definition of sovereignty, because when you realize at the end of the day, you will find out that sticking on the main definition of sovereignty, then by and large, we will see to it that countries that are sovereign here in this world will be very limited, if there will be even one. Yes, so that is why you have to come to the definition of sovereignty organized, because international bodies are there. You need to join them, and their laws sometimes supersede those laws. But the Gambian problem that was there at the time of agitating for republicanism was that lack of unity, and political party were struggling to see who will lead the Gambia at that moment. So it was not like a based on the thing of like let the Gambia just acquire whosoever is leading at that moment is good for all of us. But it's like which political party will give the Gambia republicanism and be able to be able to establish a government that will rule of the Gambia. So that is why some of them were not in support of the move for republicanism. But thank God, for the second time when he pushed, they also realized that he was doing for a good move. They came together, and then you join hands together. You could see the Muslim Congress Party by Jahompa, the how to call it, the Democratic Party coming together even to help and other stuff so that they can have what they call republicanism. So by the 24th of April, the Gambia became a Republican state in 1970. So which will see to that now, that was a kind of the sovereignty that we got.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for buttressing on that question. Okay, I will come back to John. We attained republicanism in 1970, 24th of April. And the moment we gained independence in 1955, Sadawara Kirwajora's government started putting mechanisms for national development. And according to Adikwe, in his book, Essential Government of West Africa, Sadawara drafted his first national development plan in 1967, which stretched the period from 67 to 1971. From that, when that one elapsed, he also drafted another one from 1971 to 1974. Jammeh also came with national development plans. Barrow also came with national development plans. But if we should look at them, all of these plans, I would say, fail. And it is those plans that will have, shown us the way to meeting our aims and aspirations as Gambians. But these plans, all the three governments that have, been ruled the Gambia, up to this one present ones, most of the national development plans, up to Barrow's 2018-2021 national development plan, only the present ones, we haven't seen them fully being implemented. And why do you think most of these national development plans, or in fact, almost all of them, fail?
So thank you very much, Mr. So, for this question. I will start with why do you think most of these national development plans fail? I think there is no political will. If there is a political will, a lot of these plans will even be realized. Especially, I want to start from the current president, that is His Excellency Adama Barrow. Now that he's president, he came as president in 2016, where everyone was agitating for change. We realized that we are under a dictator for a period of 22 years, and we were all shouting that we need change, we need democracy, we need reforms, especially what we call the SSR, that is the security sector reforms. We also need reconciliation among Gambians, among citizens, because a lot of things happen within these 22 years of Jammeh's rule in this country. So now when Barrow came with his plans, so one of the plans that I think it somehow failed, as you said, I will not say it's even a success, is the TRRC. Is having the TRRC, that we had a TRRC, I think we had 11 commissioners, if I'm not wrong, which started in 2018. I think it started in 2018, and it lasted for a long period. We saw people going to the TRRC, serving as witnesses trying to testify about things that happened and also the things that they did, during Jammeh's time of ruling in this country. But after everything, we could also see that the white paper was submitted. But what is happening till today? Nothing is happening with regards to that white paper. We are not seeing those that committed certain atrocities facing the law as they should. But we could only see now the president also going forward again in trying to form another commission, which opposition parties will call a witch hunt. I do not want to say whether it is a witch hunt or not, but this is another commission that also the president is forming to look into the affairs of these local governments. You understand? That is the municipality councils, the Brikama area council, and you can name them. But also now, after this commission, the white paper also will be submitted again to the president if he continues to be in office. Is he going to fulfill it? I'm not sure. Looking at what happened with regards to the TRRC, that everything was said, and now the white paper is submitted to him, but we are not seeing him doing anything. Because there is no political will, if there is any, you will see this white paper being implemented by the current president. But he is not doing that, absolutely. And now moving to Jammeh also, he has tried in several ways. His national development plan, when you do political economy, it will stretch towards education. You look at agriculture, you look at mining, you look at the social aspect of the national development plan of Jammeh. He came with brilliant ideas, with plans that when all of them were implemented, this country will not be where it is today. That is why he had what he called the Vision 2016, which is what? Grow what you eat and eat what you grow. He came with national development plans that were geared towards developing this country. And he did not only concentrate on the urban area, but he's also trying to focus on the rural area. And now moving towards Jawara's time also, he came also with his plans. And this was the time that we had what we call the Millennium Development Goals, and he when he was also president, he was also trying to come up also with ideas or with things that are going to help in making so this country move in the right direction. But I think when we want to look at independence from Jawara's time coming to Jammeh and coming to Barrow, we have to look at it in a holistic point of view. We have to look at it in the political dimension, in the economic dimension, and also in the social dimension. When we start from the political dimension, you look at this country did not had anything like election in changing government until in 2016. That was after Jawara was president. We saw Jammeh coming as president in 1994 through a military coup. And now it went until 2016 until we had a change of government. And even still now, there are a lot of people, a lot of Gambians, when you communicate with them, they will tell you that this country cannot change a government, or there cannot be a change of government through the ballot box. There must be a coup, or certain things should happen before we have a change of government. So it will tell you that politically we are weak, and we should try to develop from that aspect. And that is why also you could even see from political perspective, you could also see that this country is still weak when it comes to the literacy level of the Gambians. And that is why you could not even understand why it is difficult for opposition parties or party leaders to even have constructive debates as politicians as to the plans that they have for the country. And when you move to the economic aspect, when Jawara was president in 1985, the debt, our debt was around 3 billion as a country. And Sidia Jatta was saying he is not sure if this country will be able to repay back that debt that we had as a country. And before Jammeh is going to leave around 2016, our debt was around $60 billion. And now moving from that end, and now as we speak now, our debt is around 80+ billion to 90 billion. This tells you that economically we have failed as a country. And that is why the Brixton Wood institutions like the IMF, the World Bank, they still dictate us as a country because they are the ones who are supporting us. That someone who is feeding you is likely going to dictate you as to why and how the person wants you to use that particular fund that is giving you. And now when you look at the social aspect, permit me, when you look at the social aspect, you will realize that also this country, we have not enjoyed the socialization that we should as a country. People will speak, people will talk that we are a tolerant country, that Gambia is a tolerant country, but deep down in their hearts and mind, they even know that there is no tolerance that is being practiced in this country. So socially, we are not able to coexist. We are not able to respect diversity as a country. This will tell you that in these three aspects, that is politically, economically, socially, this country is still lagging behind. And this has to start from Jawara's regime coming to Jammeh's regime, and even the present government, whom we know that we expect him to do much, but we are still lagging behind.
Okay,
and that is why we have to question our independence as a country.
Okay, we will come back to that. That's why this discussion is named as, trying to interrogate the present status quo of the Gambia at 58 years of independence. At 58 years of independence, where do we find ourselves? Do we find ourselves in a different situation? A situation which is different from the colonial period. But what I can see unfolding here, which means, in fact, we find ourselves in the same situation, in fact, or a worse situation. That's what I can see here. By the way, the conclusion will tell. Lamin, as John has elucidated, as he has said, most of the national development plans have, partially failed. And what he has explained as the responsibility of those failures is the lack of political will. This political will that he has pointed, that we have lacked among ourselves, which gave rise to our failure in the economic aspect, social aspect, political aspect, even the educational aspect. Do you think the blame will be thrown to the leadership, or we as a people, we are also part of the blame?
I think is what constitutes a government. That is the leadership and the people together. We as people have a role to play. The government, that is the elected representative, also have a role to play. And without our collaboration, there cannot be a development. There cannot be something that we can attain as a state. There cannot be a meaningful turnover in the current turmoil of this country. I will give you just a brief, a short example. When the government constructs a road, any major road, there is a preserved part of the road that is left for further development or for expansion or so. But most of the time, you find that less than a month or two after that, you see people trying to build towards the road again because you want to claim land, you want to, fight to make sure that you gain small, maybe build up and start renting it to people.
Okay, I'm not cutting you, but when that happens, what is normally the government reaction to that?
The government reaction, there are certain branches or there are certain areas of the government that is responsible for those things to make sure that they are being taken care of, to make sure that those people do not build their houses there. In fact, those who are building their houses, in fact, at your own domain, far from the road, you should go to physical planning for it to be scrutinized whether there should be a building in that place or not. But more or less, you find that at some point, for example, in this country, you will tell a person that what you are doing is wrong. You should not do that. You take the person out from there, take him to a good place, and the person will come back there again. So at that point, the problem is not only within the government. The government have already told you that is wrong, but you still insisted.
Yeah, Lamin, I will differ.
Okay.
Yeah, the government has all the means, all the mechanisms. The government makes policies, make laws, and those laws and policies should be implemented by the government. I will say people must abide by the government. If a government cannot make people to abide by its rule and policies and also its laws, I think that government is questionable. In the events whereby rules are laid down, regulations are laid down, and people are violating them broad daylight, and the government cannot do anything about that, I don't think that government is fit for purpose.
you see, the government is just a little part of the entire population of the country. When you go to KMC, for example, in Westfield, right, you see a person who will drink a can and throw it just 2 steps are before the dustbin. So, do you want KMC to employ people to be standing on the street to be telling you that don't do this, pick it from here, you should do it here? Considering the resource that you are going to use to employ all those people, it is your responsibility as a citizen. You understand that what you are doing is wrong. You are seeing the dustbin, but you still choose not to put it there. Okay. There is a need for attitudinal change in this country, and that, despite what all the wrongs that the governments are doing, the citizens also have a role to play. In fact, at some point, when government are doing wrong, we as the citizens are the people that are complimenting them. So these are problems that you cannot remove one and leave the other one. The government have a say, but the citizens also have a role to play.
Okay, I think I'm convinced that your argument holds water. That the governments, the leadership, and the citizens are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, I am convinced that we have our rights, but also we have our responsibilities. Even whereby the governments and the law enforcement agencies are not present, we have to do what is right. That's what a responsible citizen can do. That's what I have learned from what you have said. That's why I said initially I'm sitting with political scientists, and so I will learn something today. And of course, I'm learning. I'm really learning. Okay. I will come back to Nicholas. We have found out that based on what they have explained, after independence, up till today, we haven't realized the Gambia that our nationalist leaders have dreamt for. Till now, we haven't. And I ask you a question. What was the motive behind fighting for independence? What was forcing people like Edward Francis Small, Sadao Kerewa Jawara, I am Gaba Jahumba, Reverend J.C. Face, and the other? What was forcing them to fight for independence? You said to have proper representation, to have responsible government. My understanding of responsible government is a government that is fully representing its citizens, that is doing what the citizen needs and what the citizen wants, and that is doing things that is responsive or answerable to solving the problems of the citizens. But up to date, our educational problems are yet to be solved. Our economic problems are yet to be solved. Our social problems are yet to be solved, and many, many, many other problems. Do we achieve the aims that we were fighting for during the nationalist period?
Well, it's a very good question, and I would love to speak about it. Looking at the Gambia independent for 58 years now, I could say today that, if you are to wake those people today, the lives of Edward Francis Small, Gaba Jaho, Pierre Sanjay, the life of J.C. Fay, Momodu E., you name them. If you are to wake them today and then you tell them that this is the Gambia that you were, they will tell you, no, you are wrong, my brother or my sister. Sir, you are wrong. Please take me to the Gambia that I was. This was the Gambia that I fought for. Because what happened is, after then, the Gambia seems to lose what you call national consciousness. Gambian people seems to forget about all the struggle that these people had gone through in order to give us back our independence. And sometimes I question, if you look at it today, if you have to talk about the Gambia state, the Gambia state of development, let's just analyze it from Jawara's time. Educationally, we are nowhere to be found. Because you can't tell me that only primary school and senior school, junior school would be what will make me to be unable to fight the Western. Because one thing that we have to understand is the only equalizer between us Africans and the Westerns is education. It's our only weapon of equalizer, because this is what we'll be able to counterpart, to write about who we really are, not what they wrote about us. Because what they wrote about us is only what they think about us and what suits them, so that to make us see ourselves as they are the superior. We all know that Europeans got their education in Africa. In Egypt here, we all know that. The Greek taught them, and then the Greek were educated in Egypt. Civilization started in Egypt. Why can't we Africans acknowledge what we have and then go with it? Like what the Lamin was saying about our attitude. This is because we lack national consciousness. Because when you look at it from, sometimes I even normally explain it to people that I don't see whether, I can't believe whether our national anthem had really played a part in us, in trying to mold our attitude. Whether the national pledge, if all of us even know it, had even played a role in us. Because when we say for the Gambia, our homeland, the government, we set up the government for God's sake. So how, on what base do we elect this government? Do we elect the government because they are capable and able to run the errands for the Gambians, or were they able to provide for the Gambians?
Okay.
Let me just learn. I better answer that matter. Whether also we elect this government because what relation they are to us. And this is why we sometimes look at Gambian politics as a tribal politics or whatever politics that we see. It's based on sentiment that we elect leaders. We know that you are not capable, we put you there. How do we expect the Gambia to gradually move to the promised land if we are not putting the right people at the right places? Because when we say for the Gambia, our homeland, who is out of the Gambia? Not the Mandinka, not the Fula, not the Sere, not the Manjago, not the Bambara. Everybody is included, our homeland. The national pledge will further tell us that, it is the combination of government and people, not only government doing. You as a citizen in the Gambia, what are you playing for the development of the Gambia? That is why the Gambia is still not developed. Because we believe that after putting the government there, we have no role to play. How many Gambians will walk and they see a bus pipe and they see something, look around to see something to tie that pipe? They'll tell you it is not my own, home tap. It is the government. Who is the government? Are you talking about the government as a process of governing? Or are you talking about the government as an institution of state? Or are you talking about government that you are learning in school? We are yet to differentiate which government are we talking about. When we say government, we generalize it. But government as an institution of state, we all play a part. What is your role as a citizen? And that is why when they introduced civic education in school, I was very happy. But a little bit, I was sad because they introduced it at the wrong area. They introduced it at senior school, not primary school, where students will grow up with this knowledge of nationalist, where people will still be very patriotic about their citizen, grow up with this until the age. Then they will have the spirit in them to combine hands with government. Then the pledge will now come to play. It is the combination of government and people working together in union and in harmony. So that is what I feel like they are doing. Even the skill they're supposed to take us forward. Just introduce some skills, some school skills, with some government, of course, putting of skill. But I would have loved that they put it in one school, not try to go and they expand it to other schools. But you introduce skills in schools, they don't have the materials to do the skill. They're only learning theories. Where are the practical? How will we have our own engineers to work for us? And Gambians who are lucky to be educated and be that, running away from the Gambia and going out there, give that knowledge. Our system of education is not designed the way that it suits our own, custom and tradition, our own economy, our own, development. But instead, we adopt policies that does not move. Today, I cannot regulate a child for your misbehavior because what? Policy adopted, foreign policy that suit their economy. Because all this because of what? They found me, dictate me on what I run. And this is because they realize that the only equalizer is education. Where is our agricultural sector? When it comes about development, education, where is the agricultural sector? Jahali Pacha is of a waste. Today, how much is the bag of rice? When we could have utilized it for other Gambians, then we would have not been putting rice all the time.
Okay, thank you.
Then we come back to health sector. During Jawara's time, to the Jammeh's time, to Barrow's time, where is our health sector? Where are we moving forward? But the Gambian, let me just learn, the Gambian is that if I occupy a particular government offices, until I leave from that office without a single house, the whole society will see me as a failure. They will say like, for how many years he was a president or he was a minister, he was this, not even a single house. Your father or your uncle is a failure. Let me occupy the position, and then now in 1 month, 2 months, I build my own mansion. You cheat our money. What are we trying to tell the government officials? What are we trying to talk about those people? We need national consciousness to move this country to where our great parents, like the life of the Edward Francis Small, they understand JC Faye, PS Njai, those people, Gabajahu, where they really want the country to move forward. We need to be national conscious in order to have their spirit to move this country forward.
Okay, thank you. Yes. But I will still come back to you. Yes. The national consciousness is lacking. That if I should quote from you.
Yes.
And I believe that national consciousness should have been inculcated into us at the first time that we regained our independence in 1965. Oh, yes. And that would have been done by refining the educational system, which wasn't done. We just adopted the colonial education system. And still now you will see the similarities is there. It's just a photocopy. Yes. Jawara should have taken the lead. In fact, throughout his regime, no higher education institution was established. Like there was no university. And people capacity cannot be built if there are not such an institution. So will you blame Jawara for that?
I will highly blame Jawara when it comes to education.
Not all education, but no.
Specifically education. Do you know why I'll put emphasis on education? You see, the British system of the education was like only in battles and in the surroundings that they are, not in the protectorate. Jawara is from the protectorate, which in fact triggered them to have the name the People's Protectorate Party. From Sanjali Bojang, who initiated the protectorate movement society, until Jawara developed a party, and he came as a leader of that party, as the standard bearer of that party, because he was among the only 3 people who were educated. Sanjali was not educated. That is why he drove himself back and then bring them forward. Jawara got his education by changing his faith from Muslim to Christianity. This arrangement was done by the father's friend with the British here, to cut the story short. This will tell me that he knew very well what was important of education. You learn, graduate, and come back and work in the Gambia. Lucky to become the president of Gambia for 3 decades plus, not even a single university. I call this as a deliberate action done by Jawara in order to maintain himself as the president, not to have a challenge. This is what I will call it, if I may hurt anyone. But this is how I have seen it. It was a deliberate action that was done by Jawara in order to maintain his position as a president. When you come back to educational side, of course, he may try it, but not to the extent. Jawara, just to wrap it up, when Jammeh came, yes, the education he started fine, health he started fine, but later, when people started applauding, he feel like he has done wonders and started doing whatever that he feels like doing because he thought that he was there already. And this is because when somebody occupied a personal office and did not do anything, any single little thing that you did, do you understand? You feel like you have done enough. And that is what, put Jammeh to that status. He feel like he has done a lot with what he has met before. Do you understand? He came into power. So that is why he feel like without him, Gambia will not move. And he has done a lot that he has to relax.
Thank you very much.
Barrow came, I will blame him for certain reason because, you see, in history, we need to learn. And it's only when we learn about the past that you'll be able to change the mistakes of the past not to happen again. And the reason why I will say this is because I will say that he has not learned or he has neglected. Because if I were him, what I will do is that I will study the failures of Jawara, study the failures of Jammeh, and even their goodies, do you understand? From there, I will pick up the ones that they have done good and then try not to repeat the same mistake that they have committed in the past. This is what will gain me now, the achievement that I want. But I just come in and then be repeating the same mistake where I fail to draw myself back to know. And people tell you, forget about the past is the past. But I will tell you, without the past, you cannot shape your future in this present day that we are.
Thank you very much.